Calico Joe Chapter 5. After an hour on the flat, two-lane highways of northeastern Arkansas, I realize I am quite hungry. Outside the town of Parkin, I pull into the gravel lot of a barbecue shack and hope for the best. To avoid potential conversation, I take a portion of my scrapbook to read during lunch. Over a pulled pork sandwich and a root beer, I flip through pages of press clippings I have not seen in decades. So this last chapter was all about like that 1973 season and how great Joe Castle was doing. Now we're starting chapter 5 in the present, where the narrator is on his way to Arkansas. As soon as Joe arrived in the majors, I began visiting the library in White Plains to collect stories from the Chicago newspapers. Using a massive Xerox machine near the periodicals section, I made copies at 5 cents each. The July 15th Sunday editions of both the Sun-Times and the Tribune were packed with stories and photos of Saturday's historic game. Joe was interviewed at length about the game, and it was obvious he was thoroughly enjoying the moment. Among many memorable quotes, he said such things as, "Well, if they keep me in the lineup, I'll probably hit a 750 for the season." And, "Oh, sure, we have 74 games left. One home run per game is not out of the question." And, "They'll get me out eventually." And, "The pennant? That's already in the bag, man. We're thinking about the World Series. I want to play the A's." In spite of these comments, it was clear he liked bantering with the press, and much of what he said was tongue-in-cheek. The Chicago baseball reporters, a notoriously tough bunch, were in awe and described him as a cocky but not the least bit arrogant, and at times obviously overwhelmed by what he had done. His teammates were stunned but also realistic. One said, "He'll cool off, but let's hope it takes a few weeks. Right now we've won 4 in a row, and that's all that matters." Whitey Lockman, when asked if Joe would remain in the lineup, retorted, "What? Are you crazy?" The post-game photos revealed a fresh-faced kid who looked all of 21 and was on top of the world. He was handsome, with deep-set blue eyes and curly sandy hair, the kinds of looks that would soon attract women everywhere he went. He was single and had no significant female in his life, according to one story. Everyone was falling in love with Joe Castle. I had watched the game of the week with my mother in our den and afterward met Tom Sabatoni and Jamie Brooks at a sandlot where we tossed the baseball around and talked nonstop about Joe. We took turns reenacting each of his at-bats. On that glorious summer afternoon, there was no doubt that each of us would one day do something as dramatic as Joe Castle. We would play professional baseball, no question about that. The only unknown was for which team. Not surprisingly, the 3 of us decided we would play for the Cubs together, and for a long time. I was having dinner with my mother and Jill when the phone rang. It was my coach, and he began by explaining that the All-Star voting had taken place that morning. I had been selected for the 12-player roster, the only 11-year-old to make the team. I was dreaming of this, of course, but I figured it was a long shot. I was stunned and elated, and after squealing this news to Mom and Jill, I wanted desperately to tell my father. But he was in Atlanta with the Mets, at the ballpark for a 7 p.m. game, and I knew he would not call afterward. Mom suggested I wait until late Sunday morning and call his hotel. So we can tell like there was a breaking point for this kid with his dad, because when he makes that team, that select team, he wants to tell his dad and he's excited to tell him. So sometime after that is when his dad fell out of favor in his eyes. The sandwich is gone. I gather my scrapbook, pay the check, and continue my journey. Now we're back in the present. Before long, I leave the rice and bean fields and enter hill country, then the Ozark Mountains, which are not really mountains, but more like slightly larger hills. At Batesville, birthplace of Rick Monday, I cross the White River and follow it north, through Mountain View and into the Ozark National Forest. It is a beautiful drive along Highway 5, a narrow, winding road that is probably worthy of a postcard in October, but it is August and the grass is brown. As far as I could tell, Joe Castle still lives in Calico Rock. After his brief career ended, he returned home and dropped out of sight. So here we have some foreshadowing, and notice in that sentence the narrator says, after his brief career ended. So all we've been reading is about how amazing of a season he's been having, well, even just a few games that he's played in the major leagues. And yet it says his brief career, so we know something happens. There has been stories about him, but with time and with virtually no access, the journalists and reporters had forgotten about him. One of the last efforts had been a visit by a writer for Sports Illustrated in 1977, but the town had quickly closed ranks, and almost no information was exchanged. The reporter could not find Joe and was asked to leave by his brother Red. As I enter Calico Rock, I tell myself for the 100th time that I am being foolish. Not only would I fail in my little mission, but there is also an element of danger. It is a lovely village on a bluff above the White River. Trout docks are bunched near the bridge. Fishing is important along the river. I park in front of the shops on Main Street, and for a moment I wonder what it must have been like 30 years earlier, when Joe's friends and family gathered in crowds to listen to Vince Lloyd and Lou Boudreau call the games during that magical summer. I can almost feel the heartbreak when Joe went down. I am looking for a man named Clarence Rook, the owner of the Calico Rock Record, the small weekly newspaper that has been reporting the town's business for half a century. Mr. Rook has been with the paper for almost that long, and if he chooses not to cooperate, I really have no alternative plan. The office is on Main Street, 3 doors down from Evan's drugstore. I take a deep breath and walk inside. A young secretary in blue jeans greets me with a big smile and a friendly hello. "I'm looking for Mr. Clarence Rook," I say in a well-rehearsed line. "He's pretty busy," she says, still smiling. "Can I help you?" "No, but thanks. I really need to see him." "Okay. Can I have a name?" "Paul Casey. I'm a reporter with Baseball Monthly." These lies will not last long, but the truth simply will not work right now. "Interesting," she says. "And what brings you to Calico Rock?" "I'm working on a story," I reply, well aware of how vague I sound. "Okay," she says, retreating. "Let me see what he's doing." She disappears into the back. I can hear voices. The walls are lined with framed copies of old editions, and it doesn't take long to find the one from July 1973. The bold headline read, "Joe Castle in stunning debut with Cubs." I take a step closer and begin reading. The story was written by Clarence Rook, as were most of the front page articles, and it was filled with unabashed pride. I have a copy of it in my scrapbook. "Mr. Rook will see you," she reports, nodding to a narrow hallway. "First door on the right." "Thanks," I say with a smile and head for the rear. Clarence Rook is a colorful sight. Red cheeks, white shirt, red bow tie, red suspenders, probably 70 years old, with a thick gray beard and a mop of Mark Twain-style white hair. He is chewing on the stem of a pipe, one that rarely leaves his mouth, and he is behind an old wooden desk covered with stacks of assorted files and papers. To one side is a battered Royal typewriter, circa 1950, still being used. "Mr. Casey," he says in a high-pitched, energetic voice as he thrusts forward his right hand. "Clarence Rook." I shake his hand and say, "Nice to meet you, sir." "Thanks for seeing me like this." "No problem. Have a seat." I sit in the only chair that is not filled with assorted debris. "Where are you from?" he asks with a smile that reveals his mouthful of tobacco-stained teeth. "Santa Fe," I say. "Oh, beautiful country out there. Mrs. Rook and I drove out west a few years ago, stopped in Santa Fe to see the O'Keeffe Museum. Spectacular country. Wouldn't mind living there myself." "Yes, sir, we enjoy it. But you have a pretty nice town here." "Indeed we do. I was born just up the road in Mountain Home. Don't guess I'll ever leave." "How long have you owned the paper?" I ask in an effort to kill some time with preliminary chit-chat. He seems perfectly willing to do the same. "Bought it 20 years ago from Mrs. Meeks, who owned it forever. She hired me when I was a kid. Never thought I would spend my life publishing a paper, but I loved every minute of it. So you write too?" "No, sir, I'm not a writer, nor a reporter." The smile vanishes as his eyes narrow and he tries to digest this. I continue. "And my name is not Paul Casey. It's Paul Tracy." From a drawer he picks up a pouch of tobacco, slowly fills the bowl of his pipe, tamps it firm, then strikes a match. He never takes his eyes off of me, and after he blows a small cloud of smoke, he asks, "Have you ever been told you favor Warren Tracy?" "I've heard that before, yes." "Any relation?" "He's my father." As expected, this is not well received. For 30 years, I've often hesitated when giving my last name. Usually, it does not get a reaction, but there have been enough uncomfortable moments to render me gun-shy. He puffs hard for a while, glaring at me, and finally says, "You could get shot around here." "I didn't get here to get shot, Mr. Rook." "Why are you here, son?" "My father is dying of pancreatic cancer. He'll be gone in a few months." Another puff, another cloud. "I'm sorry," he says, but only to be polite. "I doubt if this news will cause too much anguish here in Calico Rock," I say. He nodded and said, "You're right about that. Most folks in these parts would enjoy watching Warren Tracy burn at the stake, and slowly." "I realize that. Does anyone else know you're here?" "No, sir. Only you." He takes a deep breath and stares at a table lamp, trying to collect his thoughts. A clock on his wall gives him the time at 5:10. I wait somewhat nervously. He'll either order me out of his office or decide to chat a bit longer. I'm betting on the latter because he is, after all, a reporter and naturally curious. "Where's your father these days?" he asks. "Florida. He left the family when I was 12, and we've had little contact over the years. We're not close. Never have been." "Did he send you here?" "No, sir. He doesn't know." "May I ask, then, what exactly are you doing here?" "I want to talk to Joe Castle, and I'm hoping that you know the family pretty well." "Indeed I do, and I know them well enough to tell you that Joe doesn't talk to strangers, and he sure as hell won't talk to the son of Warren Tracy." So we have the narrator, Paul Tracy, finally arrive in Arkansas in Joe Castle's hometown, and he goes to see the man in charge of the newspaper, Mr. Rook, and he's wanting to set up a meeting with Joe Castle. And it sounds, based on what Mr. Rook says, that whole town hates Warren Tracy, Paul Tracy's father. And we don't know why, but somehow we're piecing together the fact that Joe Castle had a short baseball career, and his hometown hates Warren Tracy. So something happened between the two of them, but we're not sure what yet.